On both. Hey everyone, welcome to Sunrise Extra on a Thursday. Fascinating and boy, what a talker story we have for you today. An update to an exclusive investigation our Kyle Aboshi put together a couple days ago about essentially a pay-per-view autopsy situation, not for medical students, but any paying customer who wanted to go to the downtown Portland Marriott and see a live autopsy. This is the story that ran last night on our 6 p.m. show. As an update to that, watch this.
98-year-old David Saunders is remembered as a veteran of World War II, the Korean War, and a Hurricane Katrina survivor. After he died of COVID in August, the Louisiana man's family honored his wishes by donating his body to science. Little did they know he'd end up here, his body on display in a conference room at the Portland Marriott downtown waterfront, the centerpiece of a live autopsy and dissection before a live, paying audience.
Well, I think it's reprehensible.
Reached by phone in Louisiana, 92-year-old Elsie Saunders was shocked to learn how her late husband's body was used.
Using my husband's body like he's a performing bear or something. I really don't know the correct way to describe it, but that's what I feel like. He's on display.
A KGW investigation last week exposed the controversial event connected to the Oddities and Curiosities Expo held in mid-October. Tickets started at $250 each, with VIP seats going for $500. Video taken inside the event shows more than 24 people watching the dissection and at times given special access for a closer look.
Honestly, I was horrified.
This week, word of the Portland event reached funeral director Mike Clark of Baton Rouge, who handled the preparation of Saunders' body in Louisiana before it was handed off to a private company.
I was totally horrified. Our whole staff was horrified that this is what had happened to a gentleman, that he and his family thought that his body was going for the advancement of medical students.
Clark said MedEd Labs, a Las Vegas company that solicits body donations for medical and science research, never told him or Saunders' family how the body would be used.
I think it is beyond imagination. It is not conceivable that this would happen to him.
When reached by phone, the manager of MedEd Labs said event organizers indicated the cadaver would be used for training.
Anatomical and dissection purposes to teach students and people human anatomy, what happens with the human body, with organs as a person passes away.
So they suggested this was educational?
1,000,000%, Kyle. That's exactly what it was.
Do you feel like you were misled?
Yeah, Kyle. We did not know it was going to be used for a paying audience. We don't do that. We've never done anything like that, ever.
During an interview last week, event organizer Jeremy Siliberto, founder of Death Science, promised the donor and his family gave consent.
I can guarantee that he knew his body would be used for medical education.
And there's another concern. According to his death certificate, David Saunders died of COVID and pneumonia, which means a potentially infectious body was dissected at the event in which people were invited to examine the body. Do you have safety concerns knowing this was an autopsy of a COVID patient in a hotel meeting room?
I do have concerns, given that we know now that the deceased was positive for COVID, and based on the video that we observed, appropriate PPE clearly was not donned by the participants, nor were the minimum CDC guidelines followed.
Multnomah County's medical examiner had tried to stop the event before it happened because she felt it was disrespectful and unethical. Those concerns were realized after hearing from David Saunders' wife, who was furious after finding out her late husband was autopsied in front of ticket holders at a Portland hotel. Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.
Okay, right? Jaw-dropping.
It really is. I was on our KGW app here, and one thing that Kyle didn't specifically mention when they were talking about COVID, it just says that, oh gosh, I lost it. No, David Saunders died from COVID, so a potentially infectious body was being autopsied. And some of the members of the audience, it says, were even invited to touch the remains. So this other
And all they had on was simple masks, but no gowns and gloves.
But this other operation says that the body tested negative for COVID, and we said we could not confirm that.
But on the death certificate, yes, it did say COVID. So,
in the middle of that story from Kyle, you heard from the event organizer who essentially tried to defend his stance and the position of his event, saying, oh no, they knew very well what the body was going to be used for. And it's like, you know what, after hearing from that gentleman's wife, how could you still not be apologetic? There was no apology there whatsoever on the part of the event center. Yeah.
The expo is called Oddities and Curiosities. So
well,
it's kind
interesting because is it not illegal? I mean, I don't think it's
You're
illegal.
asking, is it legal for them to do what they just did?
Right.
I don't think it is illegal.
I think it's just a moral and a tact thing, and yes, letting the family be 100% in on what's going to happen to their loved one.
And misleading someone.
Custody of these remains.
Right, and misleading. The people who had, the body last were misled. And the guy says that to Kyle, clears down the phone. I mean, we did not know the body was going to be used for this. They did not explain this to us at all. And they keep putting it under the veil of, medical examination. Well, come on. Yeah, I guess you could term it medical examination because you've opened up a body in front of, to people, and there's...
Right. I know, he was a World War II veteran and a Korean War vet. He survived Katrina, and then to end up that way, and his widow saying she didn't know.
Right.
Jennifer Taft on the stream, good morning. She says, oh Lordy, this story gets worse and worse. This is awful. She also mentions that he's a vet, and ew, someone profited. I want to know who pays to attend this. And where is your ducking humanity?
You know what's funny is, we didn't know that Kyle was working on the original story that was just about this event last week. When a couple days prior, we did a story about this new, it's called a morbid curiosity test. In light of Netflix's hugely popular show Squid Game, that's kind of about, violence and what can you kind of tolerate and just this American fascination. I mean, I don't even know if it's just American, but worldwide, with the grotesque and with murders and violence and seeing all that kind of stuff. And you can take this quiz, which we did, and see where you rate and how you would answer certain questions. There it is. It's about 30 questions. And the first section is about, would you watch a live autopsy? Then there's a crazy question of, would you watch a head transplant? And then it's like, if there was such a thing. And then there's, how do you feel about violence in movies and blah, blah, blah.
That whole
Not knowing that this actually happened.
Questions.
Yeah.
100%.
I answered probably yes to that question, but I didn't think of it in the light of this, paying to attend an event to watch someone be, to watch a live autopsy.
Right, because you don't think it's actually going to happen.
I was thinking more like if I was going to the hospital to cover a story and they said, hey, we're actually performing an autopsy over here. You can step inside if you want while we're waiting. I would not be against that.
Sure.
Yes, I would probably not turn away.
But paying $300 to go to a hotel.
But I'm also not dying to go to the hospital to see that either.
Okay, more people weighing in. Shireen says that's crazy. I really would be interested in seeing an autopsy being done, but I don't think a show like that is the way to go. And then Kaylee says, I can't imagine anyone I love going through this. It's opened my eyes.
My dad passed away of pancreatic cancer, and he died at OHSU. It is a teaching hospital. Everywhere, in every room that you go into, it has a placard, and it's really cool. It explains the benefits of these medical students following around real doctors and getting that experience and talking to patients and kind of working your symptoms through their head and then checking with the doctor and everything. And when he passed away, they asked, what do you want to do with him? And so we donated his body to medical students there at OHSU, knowing, I think, that it stays there because it is a teaching hospital. And I'm all for that, I don't want, me personally, I don't need a coffin buried in the ground taking up land and space, and so I would want to be cremated or donated to science, but I would never think it would be
under those circumstances.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. It is just grisly.
I mean, medical students at a college, that happens all the time, and that's why there is that program, and their bodies are flown back and forth, and they are purchased by medical schools and things for that, but
Yeah,
not
that's
for
what
just randoms
Susan
off the
is
street
saying.
paying
Yeah.
money.
A medical environment, she says, would have been more appropriate.
Right.
Absolutely.
Was it the medical examiner? Who was the professional that Kyle talked to a week ago who tried to stop the event basically just on a gut feeling?
She was the Multnomah County medical examiner.
Multnomah County medical examiner. And she wanted to stop the event initially just because she felt this isn't right.
It was gross.
Just on principle alone.
Yeah.
And now, you know, it's even more, you know, not right, so to speak.
And let me just say, the Marriott, if I was hosting an event in that ballroom or wherever conference room, that would never have occurred to me that something like that would be okay and that they would accept. It seems like that would just be a red flag for the property.
And I wonder if and maybe if you still have that article pulled up, you can kind of scan for it, because I remember Kyle in the first story, and we want to get this right, talked to the Marriott, and I don't know if they were under the full impression that there was going to be a body being wheeled in and
well, the people who were
because it happened in Portland, and then they were going to take the show to Seattle.
Right.
But once the Seattle hotel heard about the Portland event, they were like, no, and they canceled it.
Obviously with a different body, I would assume.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe so.
Yeah. So the people who attended the Portland event, though, it looked to me like initially they were watching this autopsy on a video screen.
Well, I think it's like at a concert. You've got the thing there,
Okay,
but
so
then to see it better, you've got the camera that's angled down in.
All right. So the body was
And then you could
present
see he
in the-
invited
in the
people up
Marriott.
to kind of get a
Well, it looked like they were next to, you know, if they weren't touching it, they were certainly close.
Sure. Yeah, it's weird, guys.
What else are people saying? Are you?
Let's see. I'm monitoring. Ooh, lots of comments on YouTube. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for weighing in. Kim Tannehill says there was a famous news story back in the 90s of a woman who discovered her husband's donated to science body had been strapped to a rocket and blown up. Morphman says, I hope the event gets sued and the family of the man sues as well. Kim Tannehill says she misremembered. Here's the story. Arizona man shocked to find out his mother's donated body was strapped to a chair and detonated in U.S. military blast testing.
Oh my God! What?
Well, science.
Well, people are morbidly curious about a lot of things. What was the old program, Faces of Death?
Oh, yes.
Many Faces
Oh, you guys were talking about that the other day. Oh, you were talking about that, yeah.
Yeah, it was called Faces of Death. It was a movie. Now if you look it up online, it's famously banned in 40 countries or something along those lines. But the first one came out in the late 70s. There was another series. But I remember as a 12, 13-year-old, that being all the talk of middle school. Like, have you seen Faces of Death? And just some like kind of crazy scenes of people dying. I remember there's one of someone who like jumped out of an airplane, the parachute didn't open up, and you saw the body actually hitting the ground. I mean, it was, yeah.
No, I feel like, especially in our business, I mean, I'm not morbidly curious. Some of that quiz that I just quickly took this morning, I did answer yes to, but being in this business, I mean, we see a lot of raw video. I remember when I was working in Baton Rouge, some politician actually called a press conference and then committed suicide. He shot himself to death. And all the media was there rolling on it.
God.
And so when they brought the tape back to the newsroom, people were wanting to watch that. And I was like, I do not want that in my mind. I don't want to see it. That is just horrific. I just feel like when certain things get in my head, I don't want those images. I don't need those images. If it is not really, really relevant to something that I need to do,
and that's what people were talking about last week when we talked about this quiz. It's just like, there was one guy, well, maybe it was Joshua or Willie Huey actually, who was saying, they are really selective on what media they watch nowadays, because, and I even brought up like the silly example of like Real Housewives of fill in the blank city. It's like, I used to love that crap, reality TV, but it's just constant fighting and treating each other like crap. And that has some kind of psychological effect on you where you could start acting like that. I don't know, but I stopped watching it because it's not healthy. Kim Tannehill, I think this is a good point. She says there needs to be a way to make our society a more death-positive society. She says, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Every person who attended that seminar left with a great understanding of their anatomy and mortality.
I do agree with that.
Point.
Yeah, but I think that doesn't cover the widow who's upset, Sorry.
But I do think we're so scared as a society, I'm just talking generally, about talking about death.
And that's why we're fascinated maybe by it.
Well,
I don't know.
I think fear is a better word. It's like nobody wants to think. It always happens to somebody else. You know, maybe we would live our lives differently if we all lived every day like it was our last, right?
Are you reading Beth Ann's comment?
No, I was just looking at Connie Staub Miller, who I thought the same thing, Connie, that, you know, if this story spreads like it already is spreading, you know, will it impact people's decision to donate their bodies or to donate their loved ones' bodies to science? Because that's all this World War II veteran's family was looking to do.
Yep.
To help advance science.
Yep.
And that's not what happened.
Candy Pike says this is horrific. Sounds like a circus freak show. Wrong on so many levels. I would definitely never stay at that hotel.
Beth Ann Huffine says, my parents both donated their bodies to OHSU. The hospital holds a memorial service every year to honor those who have donated, and they invite family members. So I've been twice to those, and they've been a really lovely and special event. Talking with medical students during the reception and seeing how respectful and appreciative they were made me quite proud of what my parents did. If I knew either had ended up in the type of situation where people were profiting off the use of either of their bodies, I would be very upset and disturbed. I didn't know they did that. That's cool.
You mentioned that caught on camera, so to speak, suicide in Louisiana, which I had not heard about.
Right. A long time ago.
A similar situation happened in Pennsylvania in the mid-'80s. I don't know if you...
That is it.
Oh, I thought you were saying it happened in Louisiana.
No, she said Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no, it was, I was working in Baton Rouge at the time.
Bud Dwyer was his name.
Okay.
So when I heard you say it, I thought, oh, geez, she's talking, yeah, Bud Dwyer was like 1986.
Yes.
And the crazy thing about that story was it was a snow day in Philadelphia. And so kids were not in school that day. We had a day off. And this press conference was being held live on all the local stations. I remember specifically watching Action News on the ABC affiliate back in Philadelphia. And they were covering the press conference live. And this gentleman, I want to say he was a state representative, but he was involved in some white-collar crimes. And he called the press conference, and he pulled out the gun in the middle of the press conference, and they kept rolling.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that it was caught on camera. It was caught on live TV, and there were lots of kids. Yes. There were lots of kids at home at the time. Some stations cut off at the last second, others the second after when it was too late. And the Philadelphia, there was two big papers back then in Philadelphia, the Inquirer and the Daily News. And the Daily News front page next day had, and they were like, called out for this for years. They had a picture of him, slumped over moments after that shot, and he was, behind the podium. And I can't remember the headline, but just the image of him, in that very moment after death. That did, here I am, how many years later? I was 12. That sticks in my mind, no doubt about it. I'll never forget the name, Bud Dwyer.
That is just shocking. Yeah, it was.
Wow,
and
that's crazy.
Sometimes they'll freeze the image prior and then just let the audio roll.
Right.
I don't know about any of it.
That's crazy.
Oh, it was terrible. He was actually handing out letters to people saying, "Yeah, I need you to give this to my wife. I want you to give this to my kids." Yes.
Are you serious?
And it was kind of like just slow to almost the people in the room.
What's going on? Yeah, you're kind of
like processing this, thinking, "Well, this can't be that." And then at the last moment, there was just cries out from the room saying, "Bud, no!" Too late.
Oh my gosh.
So Susan Decker says, I think there are many that are curious as to what that looks like in there, inside bodies. I love seeing my surgery pics and checking out the MRIs. Maybe not gross, but interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I know that I was sort of the way I answer those questions, leaning to the morbid curiosity side, morbidly curious. But I will tell you, even as a guy who watches a lot of sports, in those moments where someone suffers a grotesque injury, I do not need to see that again.
Oh, totally.
Even most recently, when Yusuf Nurkic had that bad leg break, just a couple of years ago, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't, you see it happen, you're like, oh, it looks like that hurt, and then they're like, oh, look at this, he really is hurt. I'm like, no, I don't need to see it.
Agreed.
Just give me the diagnosis. How long is it going to be out for? I don't need to replay that.
Yeah. Well. It is a fascinating story, and Kyla Boshi worked with our Seattle sister station, King, on this because, again, this traveling show was going to head to Seattle as well. So
it's an important story.
Yeah, you can read much more about it. You can watch his initial one on KGW.com or on our YouTube page. So thank you guys for weighing in. Lots of thoughtful comments today. We'll be following up if there's any, kind of legal action from this story, but it is a big talker. So. Everybody have a great Thursday. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.